All right, I've got a nice little informative piece for the uninformed who really enjoy speaking about things that maybe they don't know about entirely. But first, kind of address some of the help I've got going to Ukraine. I mean, getting there, coming back while I was there, and kind of, I don't know, the community around that. And if anyone knows me personally knows, I grew up in hardcore. I met my ex-wife and the mother of my kids, over 20 years ago, going to shows and stuff like that. So that whole community is pretty much all of my best friends, everyone I know, is based on that. And, getting over to Ukraine, actually, one of my great friends, Dan Seeley from world famous King 9, linked me up with somebody in Poland, flew over to Poland, got there. I won't name his name because I don't know if he's okay with it or not. Stayed with them for 4 days and hung out with the bulldog and did a little sightseeing in Poland before somebody who was in the Ukrainian military in 2014-15 picked me up in Poland. This was in April 22 and brought me over there. When I was over there, met more dudes in hardcore who ended up helping us register our truck, who showed us around kind of the ins and outs. And this is just person to person, pretty much like it is going to any city in the United States, just meeting people and getting coffee, going to eat, and just it's kind of that mutual bond, as fucking corny as it sounds, but that's kind of the reality of what it is. It's just people willing to help people that come from the same subculture, and that's a worldwide thing, clearly, So, thanks to our Polish friend, he knows who he is. And thanks to our couple Ukrainian friends, they know who they are too. But one of the things I want to talk about, I heard on Sean Ryan, big podcast guy or whatever, there's a specific guest on there. He starts talking about basically something I was very involved in, and how there was no fighting done, and people were just withdrawing, and it just wasn't much of a fight for what is now called the Kharkiv counteroffensive, which was in early September of 2022. So I figured it's kind of the year anniversary of that, and I do want to address that too. And with that, I think a lot of went into it because from this single man's perspective, and maybe a lot of other people's perspective, it was just like, oh yeah, like they just pulled out. It was a logistic thing. It was just not much going on, which is just not the fucking case whatsoever. It's just, like I said, a very uninformed opinion from a hotel staying person, basically, which is just like the running joke of people staying at hotel in Kyiv, doing their thing there, and there's people actually out on the front lines doing real shit all the time. It's just, this war is so brutal, you're not going to see people staying out on the actual front fighting day to day for months at a time. They might be in trenches on the front, doing trench work, but you're not doing house hits. You're not doing trench assaults every day. You're not doing village assaults every single day. That's just, that op tempo is not real in this type of war. And it's not comparable. And I've been to Afghanistan. I spent a year there. I was an infantryman there. And that was also a crazy op tempo. I mean, it's on my fucking paperwork, nearly 300 combat missions in a year time. And I can guarantee before you would get to mission 100 in Ukraine, probably well before that, you'd be severely injured or just dead, But this counteroffensive, like I said, this was something that was worked on it was over a month before it even started being worked on. We were doing reconnaissance on foot. We were doing drone reconnaissance. We were just poking at the bear this entire time. And the thing is, when you talk about, a lot of people talk about, send in infantry, go do hits, send in the special operations, blah, 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 blah. Well, once again, these people don't know the fuck they're talking about. We had 2 tier 1 people on our team, Navy SEALs, MARSOC Marines, SFSG, so we had high level people in our little group. Luckily within our group, we did whatever we wanted, to be honest. We kicked people off our team, added people to our team, And I'm grateful for the handsome blonde man who he knows who he is, who brought us all together and enabled us to go do what we needed to do, you know. And it wasn't just him. There's a lot of people involved. But in this counteroffensive, which ended up being the single most significant gain of ground in the Ukrainian war history. So that war's been going on for 9 years now, and this event was the single most successful one, and there's a reason for that. So, like I was saying, when you talk about people just going away, running away, you know, part of that is true. That did happen, but to say that there was just not really any fighting for it is just stupid. You know, that's very uninformed, and it should be the standard to just say, you know what, I don't know enough about this topic to speak on it, instead of just coming out for whatever motives are and saying what you got to say. Nobody really knows, but you know, these people that speak these words. You know, but with this, there's a reason that it might seem like these people are running away. There wasn't a ton of fighting. It might seem like that because, like I said, we spent over a month conducting reconnaissance, drone reconnaissance, poking at them. And what Russia has in that area and a lot of areas is escalation dominance. There's just no doubt about it. We'd go out there, we'd shoot a fucking RPG, you know, at a house. And in under 3 minutes, we have tank rounds coming in on us. We have mortar rounds coming in at us. We have automatic grenade launchers being lobbed at us. So this is all within under 3 minutes. We're getting hit with Grad missiles every single time we would do anything. So when you talk about like, you know, why don't you go do this? Why don't you go do that? Well, like I said, escalation dominance dictates that that's just not reality. Not to mention crossing minefields to get to anywhere significant. That was one example. It's just, we had the same thing, and this wasn't all the time. Their EW was so fucking good that we didn't bring radios. We couldn't use the radios. And I think they had roving platforms of EW. So sometimes it'd be really good. We could fly. We couldn't fly our drones. Sometimes the EW would be bad and non-existent, where we could get our drones, you know, we could get our drones a mile out and do the reconnaissance that we need to do. We could use our radios, but it was just not worth the risk because the same thing happened when we fired an RPG, you know. We go out there and we keyed our radio one time to call up to HQ. And from that one key, the same thing, grenade launchers, tank rounds, mortars, just getting dropped where we were at. And I'm not a fucking tech nerd, so I can't speak to as exactly what they were using or whatever that was, but we were there, it happened, and that's just the reality of that situation. But what's good about all of that happening and us poking and doing those sort of things is we're able to gather the intelligence we need. So we were able to write down the times. We would go, you know, we'd say, okay, we do X thing, we write down that time. The response coming back, we write down that time. Every night we would sit on top of this building and we would see, okay, we do X thing, this is what's coming back. This is the time that it's coming back. You just keep making these notes. So if it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what are they sending over? Is it T-72s? Is it artillery? Is it Grad? You know, all of these different things that they have at their disposal. And we would gather that intelligence in this area and we would start putting this together. They'd fly helicopters over. They knew where they were at because they would fly right outside of our Stinger range. So we had Stinger set up. It was right outside of Stinger range. And so they knew exactly where they were flying when they would do those sort of things. But, you know, we were able to gather that intelligence and get that information and put this together to make a larger package. So when you do those sort of things, this is in hopes for future plans, which is what ended up happening in this counteroffensive. So we started sending, within the last month or so, we started sending drones out. We were there every single fucking day on the front lines. And this building that we were staying at in Kharkiv, this is not exaggeration, and anyone who's there will verify. We got hit 5 to 8 times every single day we were there with just an assortment of whatever they felt like firing at us. And because there would be times we ran out of mortars, so we couldn't counter with anything. So we just sit there and fucking take it. Day after day after day after day, because like I said, with escalation dominance, they knew they had the trump card. They know we would step foot in the forest and they could launch whatever they wanted at us because it almost seemed wasteful, the amount of indirect fire and tank rounds and things like that we were getting. But with us gathering that information, plotting the targets, I still have these targets on my ATAC actually. And then I won't name the country, but I was able to link up with a Western intelligence, and they gave me live satellite imagery for this counteroffensive. So with the live satellite imagery, I got the pictures, and there was a lot of targets fucking listed on there. So when we go out there, we go back to the Ukrainians, we give them this targeting information, and then we start setting out HIMARS targets. We start setting out targets for these M777s that we have for the over a dozen peons that we have firing. If you don't know what a fucking peon is, go look it up. But they're loud from no matter where you're at. So we had all of those sort of things at our disposal. We had engineers, actual route clearance, which is the first time and only time actually, I've ever experienced that. But to sit here and say, like I said, nothing happened. Well, there's a reason they left, and it's because of the things I just named, because of the Western intelligence that was provided to me that I was able to give to the locals. 2 plot HIMARS targets, 2 plot M777 targets, 2 plot peon targets. And so being able to provide that was just the base of what happened. And my portion of that was planning the entire southern assault while this was happening. So I got to brief my entire group. There's about 50 of us on the southern assault that we were going to be doing, which was considered at that time like the less dangerous route. And out of the 50, we took 2 KIA and we had 4 casualties just on the infill, which our portion of this assault was a frontal assault on an entrenched position over a minefield. So do that math in your fucking head. Think about how many Americans have ever done it? Probably not many. So when these people talk about like special operators or, well, we really need like American infantry, it's just, that's the most American thing to say in a war you just have no experience with. You don't have experience being hunted by helicopters. You don't have experience being hunted down by fucking airplanes, by accurate drone-guided artillery, by accurate drone-guided mortars, by Grad. You just don't have experience with that. So like a lot of people, your opinions don't matter because you don't have that experience. It doesn't matter what you did in the United States. When I was in Afghanistan, it was honestly just felt like, well, I was also 21, 22 at the time when I was there. I was just like, I literally can't be killed. That's how I felt. That was also, like I said, being young, but also we had things on station. You can sit there and, have your 05 just drop JDAMs whenever you wanted to. A single sniper in the mountains, you're sending planes on them. And that's just how America does things. And we don't have that. To go and say, we need to hit these houses, do this and that. It's the same thing. You go and hit these houses, you have maybe a minute or 2 before the artillery and mortars, drone guided, just start pounding you. And you're not able to leave your position. You're not able to get your dead buddies out of there. You're not able to get your wounded out of there because you were just pinned down until they decide you're not pinned down anymore. Once again, escalation dominance that was something that they had until we had planned this specific mission. And the specific mission, going back to kind of where I originally started with the people in this hardcore community and like a lot of people close to me and things that mean a lot to me. I had met a specific group. They were an anti-fascist group, and they were the first group I had contacted when I went over and talking to them. They're just literally saying, hey, we want to fight, we need training, but we're not fighting right now. And I said, sorry guys, basically, I'm going to go do the fighting. I can't just be in the west of Ukraine training right now. That's not what I want to do, and I'm not what I will be doing. Fast forward 7 months, and I end up meeting these guys face to face. And these are guys just like me, just like all of my fucking friends, covered in tattoos, X's on their legs, my same age, they're just the same type of guys. So their portion of this Kharkiv counteroffensive was a 3-mile long cordon. So they were going to hold this 3-mile line base. It was more of a wedge position. So they're going to hold this 3 miles. And I asked them, okay, how many guys do you have? They're like, oh, we have 60 guys. Okay, how many have seen combat? 2. So out of 60 guys, like I said, think about your best friends in hardcore and music or whatever in general. Think about if you have 60 people that will go out and fight in an actual war with you because your friends and family are being killed. And there's, in reality, maybe not a lot of those. But these guys went and fucking did it. So I said, okay, 2 guys have seen combat before. That sucks. What type of weaponry do you have? You know, have you guys been training? What's this and that? And they had a British guy that was training, helping them train up for this type of thing. And then from there, they have one machine gun, they have 3 RPGs, and it's just straight out like that's not enough for a cordon. That's not enough for what you're trying to do, because they were deep in the position where it needed to be. This area hadn't even been cleared of Russians. So this was technically like still Russian held areas they were going to go do. So meet them, go out there, eventually meet them another 2 or 3 times. I have my ATAC pulled up, like I said, because I had already been gathering the intelligence, plotting the targets, putting all the danger areas and the avenues of approach for Russian tanks and things like that. So I gave it to them, and in typical Ukrainian fashion, their leader was like, "Oh, I have all this already. Like, you're not showing me anything new." I was like, "Well, listen, man, you're cool, but you don't have this because I personally put this on ATAC because I saw with my own eyes and I conducted the reconnaissance myself. Like, this is on there because of me, and nobody has this." And so we ended up exchanging intelligence because they had some stuff from the area too. But like I said, we had been working this area for over a month already before this counteroffensive even started. We ended up giving them machine guns. We ended up giving them more RPGs. They gave us a few grenades that they had because they had a surplus of that. And just like sidebar with that, it's, me and my friends who were over there, we talk about this basically like Grand Theft Auto is what it seemed like, because we would show up places and we wouldn't have weapons sometimes. When I first got there, we went out on a QRF with, I had no weapon, our leader had a rocket, and our medic had no weapon, And that was one of the first QRF missions that we were on. And it was just really like unhinged more than fucking anything. But then there'd be other times we show up, it's like out of a movie, a white van shows up, door slides open, and there's just machine guns, rockets, ammo, grenades, optics, anything you can name. And it's just, okay, yeah, take everything out of here. It's like, all right, cool. Like, where did this fucking come from? They're like, oh, we just grabbed it in Poland and drove it over. All right, nice. So there's stuff like that was happening pretty frequently. You could trade stuff, different things. I'm going off on a fucking tangent about fucking weapons trading, but so we ended up exchanging that information with them, things like that. And we go out, we do the mission. And so when this when this guy talks about, like I said, no danger, no fighting for this, it's the most untrue thing. Like we had 2 KIA, 4 casualties, and they lost their leader on this mission. On their cordon, they lost their leader. His name was Yuri, and he was my age, hardcore dude, all of the same stuff. And luckily I was able to meet with him, give him all of the information I had, in exchange. And these are just people fighting for their country, hardcore dudes like anyone I know out there and walking the walk, not just talking on the fucking internet about what they're going to do or what they would do, this and that. They're out there actually doing it, So to hear that there's no fighting and to see friends die, in those situations, a little fucking infuriating inside. And I wrote down a bunch of notes of just a bunch of stuff, I didn't want to forget. It looks like I covered most of it. But, on that mission, we had SSO, we had Alpha Team. SSO is their special operations. Alpha Team is kind of like their step above from there. Anything you could name, asset-wise, we had on station pretty much. And the fact that we had over a dozen peons there, which is probably the majority of what's there in the entire country, for this mission specifically. So they had went out, they did their cordon, successful mission, clearly, because it eventually cleared out close to 1,000 square kilometers. Like I said, the biggest one of the war. But the one thing I did want to talk about was, that one, that clearly had an effect on me, because that was somebody that I gave information to, gave instruction to, helped set up where they needed to be, type of thing. And he ends up dying. And then when I hear this guy talk about not much fighting, like I said, it still makes me mad. But his wife wrote a letter, and I want to read the letter because it's actually really fucking hard for me to read. But it's just very significant, and this shows just part of that community, but also puts a sense of reality on what war actually is. Instead of saying, I'm going to go do this, go do that, there are people who are doing this and doing that. And she wrote, Lover, you're the best I had, and you will always be in my heart and memory. This is all translated. I'll do everything possible for me to get back on my feet to be able to raise our blood. I know how much you loved us and wanted us to be safe, how much you worried about us. You are the best dad and husband. You will always be the one. No matter how hard it is for me, I will smile and enjoy every moment in life so you can be calm. You are our hero and protector. I really want to say a lot and tell you while I'm holding your already cold hand. We will meet you with dignity and see you through. Thank you for everything you have done for us in Ukraine. Be always around to be able to feel your presence in our daughter and the Celesti trees in the midst of the wind and our friends. Infinitely love, miss you very much, and thank you for everything you have done for us. So that's a letter from a fucking widow in this war that this man says was just not fought for. So yeah, I just wanted to read that because, like I said, it puts a very personal touch on something that was very significant and close to me in that counteroffensive. You know, and even going from there, we pushed all the way out to the Russian border, to the Oskil River. You know, and you hear people talk about, you know, the Russians suck, you know, they're not shit, blah, 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 blah. Well, have you ever thought about maybe there can be good ones and bad ones at the same time? How about that? You know, there can be good and bad, just like Ukrainians. There's good ones, there's bad ones. You know, some are more skilled than others. And the prime example of another mission we had gone when we were still pushing through Kharkiv in the forest of Kupiansk. We went over there. This was our second trip. We originally went over the first time, and we were so far in the Russian lines. We were in between a tank battle, and the place we were staying, the window shattered from the blast from the tanks, from the Russian tanks. So that's how close we were in between this tank battle across the river when we were doing our reconnaissance out there. The second time we went across, we go out, long fucking story basically, but we get laser targeted by 5 Russian Spetsnaz while we're sitting in our foxholes, our overnight foxholes. It was probably 35 degrees at night. It was raining. We had 4 guys get fucking hypothermia. We ran out of food and water because the food and water that was supposed to come got ambushed, and these guys' legs got mangled. So we didn't end up having a resupply or anything. So we've got guys cramping, no food, no water. Laser targeted by Russian Spetsnaz, and in that laser targeting, we could see with our IR, you know, they were doing the classic loop. You know, they were doing the infinity symbol basically, or the figure 8 for targeting. And we called up and we asked, like, hey, do we have friendly drones up? And typical Ukrainian situation, we don't know. Let me get back to you. You know, 30 minutes later, they're like, yeah, we don't have any drones up. Those aren't ours. I'm like, oh, nice. This is going to be a good night. So after that is when we got laser targeted, and from that laser targeting, they dropped the most accurate grad on us possible. They sent anti-personnel grad that landed directly on us. So I looked over to my left. We were set up on a whole perimeter. We were on an anti-armor mission right now, but like I said, we were dug into foxholes in this forest. So I look over to my left. I see grad, basically what I think is just killing everybody on my team, because the missiles are just hitting directly on our positions, basically. And you just see it one after another, getting closer, closer, closer. Finally, when it gets fucking close enough, when they're dropping directly on our heads, we get down in our foxhole. I mean, if we would have lifted our arm up out of our foxhole, our hand would have been littered in shrapnel and maybe gone, because all the sand around us, all the trees around us, everything was just covered in shrapnel. And the Ukrainian guys that were to our right, unfortunately for them, they were too hardcore to be bothered with digging real foxholes, so they got maybe 6 inches and like, this is good enough. Grad's dropping on them, and they're just fucking screaming the entire time, which at that moment in time was like kind of funny for us, because it wasn't injuring them, like nobody got hurt, but just hearing them scream and yell in the middle of the night, you know, fucking suka, 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 like, okay, well, that was that. And then, more points, like I said, just going back to some of the notes that I took. when you talk about Americans going over there and knowing what to do in certain situations with mortars and artillery, that's also not reality. To sit here and tell Ukrainians who have been there for 9 years under mortars and artillery, when the majority of Americans fighting in wars have not actually experienced that, completely different situation. Mortars and artillery, you could say is X certain thing, whatever. Drone guided mortars and artillery, accurate dropping on you, is a completely different world. So our SOP, I mean, I asked a Marine Corps instructor currently, what their SOPs are for reacting to mortars and artillery. And it's the same as it was in the Army. You get down, you yell a distance and direction, you head that distance and direction. That's just still the stupidest thing to do. And that's just, you're going to end up getting killed that way too. And what you really need to do is find a fucking trench, find somewhere to get your head down at, or just get down wherever you're at, because you can run wherever you want to. The drone is just going to follow you and continue dropping shit on you. And if you're running towards the enemy, that's even stupider, which is what the American SOP is right now. And then when you yell that distance direction, you go 400 meters and you stop, you get ace reports, you do this and that. Okay, fucking great. Now the drone is just going to drop. They're going to send the GPS coordinates again and drop more shit on you while you're stopped for fucking 3 minutes. And then everyone around you is going to die. That's the reality of American SOPs in this type of war. So no, the majority of Americans don't know what to do in those situations. There's a wake-up call for me, the tier 1 guys on our team, the SEALs on our team, all of these people from all these different backgrounds I will say, all agree it's nothing that's been experienced before. So that was just a completely different tactic, that needs to be used. Another talking about different tactics and things like that too. There's different areas where you can do different things. Down in the South, when we were there is no doing anything. There is no going in wood lines. There is no walking around. It's just drones, tanks, artillery, really heavy drone, everything. IR drones. We couldn't do any reconnaissance. We couldn't walk around anywhere. Nothing on foot, at least. And even the EW is so good, you could barely send out drones anyway. In Kharkiv, we got a lot better freedom of movement, which allowed us to go do some patrols, go do some reconnaissance on foot, go do drone reconnaissance a lot more successfully. And then going back to kind of what I was talking about with the different skill levels of Russians, some are trash. We captured some guys in Kupiansk, and 5 days ago, they were at home eating fucking borscht with their family. They had 2 days of training with their AKs. This is what they said when interrogated. 2 days of training, they get sent to the front line. 3 days later, they're captured by our guys, and they're bound in a basement somewhere being interrogated. That was in 5 days. But when you go to places like Bakhmut, where most of the team just came back from recently, they're talking about the Russians there using their IR floodlights to wash out your night vision. So it becomes ineffective when it's just IR floods pointing at you the entire time. And then more accurate mortars and more accurate artillery and real war fighters fighting. So like I said, to really sit here and say, why aren't they just pushed out of the country? Why aren't they this? Why aren't they that? Well, it's not exactly that easy. And to get to most of these fortified positions is a fucking nightmare. Another prime example, you can revert back to our last episode where Bish, he's a fucking 25 years, he's an SAS operator, and what they did was hostage rescue. That whole hostage rescue mission, that they did, there's an 80% casualty rate. On our team alone was over 100% casualty rate because people are getting wounded multiple times on this mission. So you're talking about somebody who is one of the best in the world. There was HIMARS on, there was HIMARS pre-targeted. So we already had those set up, and they're still unable to breach the fortified positions that these Russians had. So they're not punks everywhere you go. Some places they will be, some places they won't be. But to universally say these Ukrainians are better, Ukrainians are worse, Russians better, Russians worse, it can be both. They can be better some places, worse some places, and the inverse. Yeah, so that was just a few things I wanted to address, but specifically, like I said, I wanted to get the attention of everyone out there who is like me, who comes from the background that I come from, and bring recognition to people like Yuri and all of those guys. And I won't name their group because I don't know if they want to be named, but they'll know exactly who I'm talking about because they're still fighting out there now. They go from training to no fighting experience to working a mission with me, having a massive success in the Kharkiv counteroffensive. And like I said, there's a reason that was successful. I mean, we had, when we had our final meeting, there's probably over 30 different commanders at the sand table, and every single person is saying, this is my job, this is what I'm supposed to do. And if this doesn't work, this is what I'm supposed to do. And to be fair, this is the only time I'd ever experienced that in any Ukrainian planning, because a lot of the times, really the majority of the time, we'd get 2 hour notice, 11 at night, hey, you need to be here at 1 o'clock, we're going to go do a village assault. And we go on there, soft skin vehicles, and just, I don't know, it's like the Wild West of bullshit, basically. You go out there, nobody tells you what's going on. You're in these trucks and you see white phosphorus coming down. And, you know, just a small thought of like, oh, you know, white phosphorus isn't supposed to be used in wars. Well, it fucking is. Anti-personnel mines just laid out everywhere that are just not exploded, which, same thing, these clusters are not supposed to be there. Well, guess what? They are. And that's the reality. They'd say, yeah, there's 200 guys coming, and we show up and there's 50. Oh yeah, we got 20 tanks. Oh, there's 4. And this is how a lot of my friends have died in situations like these. How a lot of Ukrainians have died in situations like these. So it's a very proud moment in the counteroffensive to be able to say that that was successful. Everyone did what they were supposed to do, and there's a reason for that success. And, you know, like I said, thankfully for some Western intelligence with targeting and able to pass on those 777 and HIMARS targets, we made it a big deal. So from Balakleya, Ukraine, all the way to Kupiansk on the Oskil River and across the river, we were able to push through that entire area and just stomp through the entire way. Going back to like Grand Theft Auto and like Wild West stuff, there'd be villages we would clear through on the way out there. Same thing, there's women, children, men crying. They're grateful that you're there because they're proud Ukrainian. But we'd get there and they'd tell us like, oh, if you go to this building, you know, it's just floor to ceiling with weapons and ammunition and this and that. So of course you go and there's thermobaric RPGs from floor to ceiling, 5,000 square feet worth, just floor to ceiling RPGs. And, you know, we didn't have the vehicles or anything at the time, but I mean, really, there's nothing stopping anyone from just taking as much as you want and then just going about your day. Go take it back to your room if you want to. So it's really kind of crazy stuff like that. That was pretty common occurrence. But as somebody who was in it day to day with some of my closest friends, it's a little bit different than sitting in a Kyiv hotel getting secondhand information when you're personally out there experiencing it, working side by side with these people in the mission planning stages. With brigade level commanders doing those sort of things. And this isn't like fucking toot my own horn, but this is the reality of what actually happened. So there is a reason when you see videos of Russians leaving trenches, leaving cities and things like that, it's because of the planning and execution that occurred for that. Let's see if I got anything else really written down. Yeah, that's kind of everything I wanted to go over. I'm sure I'll get a bunch of crazy feedback from this, probably from hopefully some good stuff, you know, from a lot of people that I'm close with. And yeah, and that's that for this story.